They say that success is built on strong foundations. So when 20 years ago, when Stuart Watkiss took the reins of Mansfield Town's first team, a side which was full of his youth team starlets, fans dared to dream of achieving promotion. There were twists and turns along the way and it went all the way to the wire, but in the end, Watkiss and his side made dreams come true.
Ball into the area for Kelly, keeps possession, drives it across the edge of the 6-yard area, cleared as far as Hassel, back into the box it goes, and we're in front! Mansfield have it, and it's Andy White! It's absolutely nuts at Field Mill! Corner then, he's going to take this corner, holds both arms aloft, the referee waiting to give the signal. Williamson's on the goal line, Greenacre's near the near post, into the area it goes, Tankard heads it goalwards, it's in! It's Andy White! Andy White's made it 2-0! And now we have a little bit of a comfort zone. The referee looks again at his watch. It's just about over. 3 seconds remaining. The referee's blown and Mansfield are promoted to Division 2. Scenes of jubilation at Field Mill.
This is the Mansfield Matters podcast, and 20 years on, we're recalling the stories from that historic campaign with those at the heart of it all. This is Stag Stories, the glory of the Amber generation. Well, hello and welcome to a very special Mansfield Matters podcast. This is the return of Stag Stories, a brand new series 20 years since the Stags were promoted from what was then Division 3 into what is now League 1. And 20 years on, with Nigel Clough's men looking to do the same, we thought it quite fitting to look back on that era and speak to the people involved. Joining me over the course of this series will be former Stag striker Andy White, who will act as my co-host. But first, he's got to go under the spotlight himself. He's going to be the first guest on this series. He's been on Stag Stories before and shared many a fantastic tale about his time at the club. An infamous quote, "A quid's a quid." Really enjoyed that episode. If you've not seen that whole episode, go and check that out because he talks about his journey from start to finish. But in this particular episode, we're going to be talking specifically about 01-02, the things involved, the players involved, and the things which you can look forward to over the next 8 weeks or so right here on the Mansfield Matters podcast. So first and foremost, let's say hello again to our old friend Andy White. How are you doing, pal?
Hi, Craig. Okay, mate?
I'm very good, mate. It's good to see you again, and really, really good that you've decided to jump on board with this. We've been speaking pretty much non-stop since you did the episode with us pretty much nearly a year ago now, and you were saying, I want to get this charity game sorted. I want to get a reunion of some sorts, and jobs and life and stuff sort of got in the way, and we eventually sat down sort of late January time and said, look, it's a game's probably not going to happen at this point because of where Mansfield are on the table and how much it takes to organise, but let's do something in podcast form. Let's reunite people. And you've been busy because you've got your little black book of contacts out and you've been messaging all your old teammates, all your old staff and colleagues and things like that, and you've lined us up some absolute corkers, haven't you?
Yeah, it's nice to reconnect, and if you can't reconnect after 20 years and have that as a bit of an occasion to reminisce. I know lockdown came and there was all the nice videos reminiscing, and that brought back quite a few memories. And it's nice to do that and kind of catch up with old friends and listen to those stories again.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm really looking forward to speaking to some. We've got some excellent guests lined up, including former physio Barry Statham, who's quite a character, isn't he?
Yeah. No, all the lads love Baz, and he supported a lot of them through some quite difficult times if you think about an injury. And with his kind of spirit and his dry sense of humour, got him through it. We had a good laugh along the way.
Yeah, and one of the things to get him through was this thing called the Blue Run. Do you want to explain to us a little bit about what the Blue Run is and how that will be a recurring theme over the next 8 episodes or so?
Yeah, it was one of Baz's from his military days, wanting to give us a bit of a test through rugged terrain, through Thieves Wood in a timed way. So we had to do this run through the kind of navigate the blue signposts through Thieves Wood, which is, I think it's about 3 or 4 mile track all over various terrain. You had to get in under 20 minutes, and if you didn't do it, you had to do it again. So we always filled with fear when the Blue Room came out, usually on a pre-season. We used to do it probably once a week pre-season. So yeah, that was struck fear into the hearts and minds of many a footballer, the Blue Room.
Now, as you've been sort of reconnecting with your former teammates and staff, what conversations have you been having with them? Obviously, we'll get some stories and stuff which come out on here when we get those individuals on an episode. You know, the likes of Bobby Hassel, Barry Statham, as we've mentioned, Kevin Pilkington, and a fair few others as well. But what sort of memories have you guys been batting backwards and forwards in the private chats, in the text messages, and the phone calls that you've been having?
Mainly about that final game of the season and the night out after, to be honest, because that was a pretty memorable night out. It was one of those rare occasions when the whole of Mansfield was just absolutely buzzing. And I think everybody you talk to, you know, all the lads, they've got really, because we all stuck together as well throughout that night out, which is quite rare as well. We're all just as a group together, having a good time and celebrating what was a fantastic achievement. So they're the kind of standout memories from most of the lads, really.
Let's take it back to the start for you. We'll come into the 01-02 season in more depth later on, because I think that's arguably where you made your name as a Stag. But let's take it back to the start for you. How did it all begin? Who was involved with bringing you to the Stags, and how did it all come about?
Yeah, so it was Barry Staven, obviously, Ivan Hollett as well, who we've kind of talked about, sadly passed away yesterday. He was a big influence on my career, as well as obviously Skip and Billy Dearden. So I played a pre-season friendly for Mansfield Town against the Stags, and I remember Baz coming over and shaking my hand and saying, "Well done." And I'm like, "Oh, as a 17-year-old student at that time, as I was quite taken aback, really, in terms of the feedback I was getting from the coaching staff around my performance. I think I only came on for the last 15 minutes or so, so I must have had a decent spell. And then they came to watch me in another pre-season friendly for Hucknall against South Normanton, and after that they said, "Oh, we would like you to come and train with us for the summer." And I said, "Well, great, but I'm flying to Spain tomorrow." So I was away I went for 3 weeks, actually. Luckily, back then, you could get away with having a few drinks every day because as a 17-year-old. But I came back and, went straight into it. And it was a big old transition for me, you know, training every day with the first team as I did back then as a 17-year-old. So obviously the youth team were training as well, but I trained with the first team back then, and that was a massive baptism of fire for me in terms of, you know, the possession drills, feeling as though even when you give the ball away in a possession drill, I kind of beat myself up a little bit in terms. But it was a big part of that, you know, growing up as a footballer, if you like, that 6 weeks, that as you know, training every day, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
What swung it for you in terms of signing for Mansfield? Because I know from our previous chats privately that, you know, you had a tough decision to make, because when you were playing for the likes of Hucknall as well, the money difference wasn't as vast as what people may have thought it would have been.
No, I mean, I always felt, you know, I'd do my A-levels, go on to be a PE teacher and go down that route as my career. And then all of a sudden, I'd always dreamt of being a professional footballer, but never felt it was going to happen. So I'd kind of parked that dream to one side. And this journey with Mansfield, I really like, yeah, it's great, but I didn't really see anything coming of it. And then when I got the opportunity, I can remember vividly Billy Dearden pulling me into his office, saying, "Look, lad, there's a professional contract here at the end of your A-levels." And it was a case of, right, well, what have I got to lose? You know, I'm going to live my dream for a year at least, even if it is only short term. But I'm going to say that I've been a professional footballer. So, yeah, I can remember the journey home with my dad after we'd signed, and I was on absolute cloud nine. It was like all my dreams had come true, really.
Yeah, I can imagine it was a good time. I think it's always that dream, isn't it, to play for your local club and things like that. Now, I know you're a massive Derby fan as well. So I know that's a passion of yours as well. But how much was Mansfield on your radar when you were a youngster? Because obviously you were playing for a few local non-league teams. Had Mansfield cropped up on your radar at all?
I was playing for local Sunday side Adask, and I had a chance of either going to Chesterfield or going to Mansfield as an under 16. And I don't know what, I think it might have been you got a tracksuit at Chesterfield or something like that. So I went down where you got a tracksuit, to be honest. I played for Chesterfield for a year, under 15s, under 16s, and then again got released from them as a 16-year-old. And you talk about the highest, point as a journey of signing professional. Well, being released by Chesterfield was probably my lowest. And again, a vivid journey home from Chesterfield College. I think we trained back then, and that was really kind of, as a 16-year-old, that I felt my dream had gone back then. So again, just wasn't on my radar to go and pick up at Mansfield, and luckily kind of stumbled across it.
I think it highlights the fact that Chesterfield know very little about football, doesn't it?
You could look at it in two ways, really. One that they knew what they were doing, or another that they'd let one go. But no, I enjoyed my time as a professional footballer, and I've had experiences. I still play now for veterans, and obviously I'm not as agile as I used to be. Let's put it like that. And even through my kind of non-league playing days at Sutton, and I've played for Reneth, and I used to get loads and loads of hassle. You're not very good in not so certain terms and all that. But I just turned around to them and said, look, I've done what I've done. I've played professional football, and there's not many people who can say that. And I can say to my little lad that I was a professional footballer. So that's good enough for me.
What about nowadays in the here and now? Because we speak to many people that go down different routes. Bobby Hassell's in the academy at Barnsley, leading that. Liam Lawrence, for another example, for a player that was in your sort of your era, your team, that particular team as well, has gone into media in some parts as well. Others have dropped off the radar completely and gone down different channels. What about you? What are you doing post-football?
Yeah, so when I was at the back end of my career, we had the PFA come in to talk about a degree course that they were running for footballers. So I signed up to that when I was at Notts County, and that was a 2-year part-time degree course in professional sports writing and broadcasting. And that was all full of footballers. A.D. Moses was on that, Scott Minto, Lee Bullock. So it was basically just like being in a dressing room, but in a university. And again, after training on a Monday and Thursday, we used to go to Staffordshire University at Stoke, just have a laugh, every Thursday. And it was a 2-year course, all fully funded through the PFA, and I got a degree at the end of it. And I knew, not necessarily I wanted to go into journalism, but I knew that I needed a degree to progress in whatever career I wanted to go down. I knew definitely I didn't want to stay into football, so I wanted to get out of football. But did my degree, and I progressed in the world of public health. So help, support projects around childhood obesity, health improvement, Sure Start, early years, mainly Nottinghamshire as well. So I've done a lot of my work in Nottinghamshire, and recently transitioned over to where I live in Derbyshire and Derby.
I find it interesting that you mentioned in there that you knew that you wanted to get out of football. What sort of made you make that decision? Was it the fact that you dropped down a couple of divisions, or you just sort of run its course like I think most things in life naturally do?
Yeah, I think it's that security. I need that security for myself, really. I need to know where that next kind of paycheck's coming from. I know that, if I twist my knee and become injured, I'm not relying on that. Whereas in football, you are, one twist of a knee and that's you done. And I didn't want to live my life like that. I didn't want to live my life constantly looking over my shoulder, thinking about, am I going to get sacked as a coach? Am I going to get sacked as a footballer or released? I just wanted that stability, and that's how I wanted to, take my career and take my life, really, which is what I did. And also, it's a dog-eat-dog world in professional football. Everybody's after your job, if you like, your contract, your place, and that just wasn't the environment for me. I want to be in like a nice, nurturing environment, which I've kind of found myself in.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and you mentioned in that the PFA as well. And I was listening to Ben Foster, the Watford goalkeepers podcast, the Fozcast the other week, and he had the current head of the PFA on there and was sort of explaining how it all worked. And I think there's this perception sometimes from football supporters that the PFA mainly work with top flight players, but he was sort of explaining that no, it runs all the way down to League Two and quite a majority in the non-league as well. Was that the case when you were a player, or has it evolved since then?
No, it's definitely the case. You are a professional footballer and you are part of that kind of union. You're part of that, for the rest of your life, really. And obviously the opportunity to do a degree where you could be paying, 15, 20 grand in terms of debt. You got your accommodation on top of that. Well, I got my degree for free, which was funded through the PFA. I think I paid a little bit, but only about 500, a grand, something like that. So I got a cheap degree in effect that's now on my CV, and I've got that for life. And also since kind of quitting football, whenever you've got any kind of niggling injuries, I've had a bit of a problem with my knee about 5 years ago. Contacted them a week later, straight to an MRI scan, private hospital, injection I needed back then, and that was sorted. And I'm just about due for another one, so I need to give them another call.
Yeah, well, we definitely wish you all the best with that. And is that something which you feared when you became a footballer, when you were first starting out on your journey? Because it's not necessarily something which I think young footballers, that are coming through academies and things like that necessarily know about that protection within the game. They're just hungry to play, aren't they? But they've got to take care of that sort of things. And it's one of those sort of maybe hidden things which people within the game don't necessarily talk about.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, as a young, 19, 20, 21, it never really crosses your mind because you think you're invincible, don't you? And you never think it's going to happen to you. So it was never something on my mind. I think one thing that was on my mind was the kind of longevity of football and professional football, and I knew that I needed to get something under my belt pretty quick in terms of something a bit longer term, which is why I did the degree course at, I think I was 25 at the time, rather than waiting till I was in my 30s, because I probably had a bit of an inkling that I was on a bit of a downward slope from Notts County. So I made that decision, and it turned out to be the right one. In fact, I went over to Basford College because I was going to look at doing a tiling course, start my own tiling business. Tyler White, I was going to call it. So, yeah, that's trademark, that name, so I might use that again. But no, I kind of had a conversation with some of the tutors there, and I felt I'm more of a kind of white collar worker than a proper grafter. I don't think I've quite got the patience to be a tiler, which is why I went down the more academic route.
It's funny that, I think that's quite a thing that some footballers perhaps don't think about either, about the different routes. But one thing which they were saying in that particular episode, and one thing which has certainly made me think is there actually a variety of paths which the PFA offer, or was it literally just here's some routes within football? Because it's post-playing, it's actually quite a niche thing to get into, really. There's only probably two mainstream routes you can go if you want to stay within the game, and that's either the coaching route or the media route.
This was the first degree of its kind for the PFA, a standalone professional football association funded course full of footballers as a degree. So yes, it was down the kind of media route, if you like, as a to give us some kind of training to go into that area, whether it be like Scott Minto hosting a Sky Sports show, for instance, or some of the other lads just did some co-commentating, or Adi Moses did a little bit of kind of side stuff around co-commentating as well. So yeah, it just gives you a bit of a structure to how you come across on the radio or on the telly, and maybe even turn it into some kind of job. So yeah, that was the first of its kind.
If you were to go into a dressing room now, a young dressing room, say of I don't know, the under-21s or under-19s, and sort of say to them, this is my career path. There's a bigger, wider world out there for those of you that don't make it. What would you say, and how do you think they'd respond to that, given the way that the game's changed now?
I'd try my best to convince them to start taking it seriously now. and not wait, in terms of getting some kind of qualification behind you. I know nowadays they are very good in terms of ensuring that anybody through the youth team, they're always studying for a course. And I know even back then there were even some of our youth team lads did kind of sports science kind of A levels while studying, and they're even better now in terms of making sure that is the bread and butter, and this constantly drilling into them that not many make a career whereby you don't have to work again. So it's all there. I try my best to kind of just purvey some of my experiences, really. And if you think about my last kick in professional football was at Wembley Stadium in front of 55,000 people. The Monday after, I was in an explosives factory packing explosives, and that's how quickly it turned for me. But I knew that I needed to do that. I knew that professional football wasn't going to last forever. I took that decision at Kidderminster. Right, that's enough. I'm going to go and play non-league. I'm going to get a job and build my career away from football. And it was difficult, getting up at 5:30 in the morning when you used to strolling out of bed at 9:30 and going to training at 10. Well, I'm now having start at 6, and I'm doing a really monotonous job from 6 o'clock till 4 o'clock with very little breaks. Then after that, I'm getting in my car, I'm travelling up to workshop to go training, maybe have a game, and you get back at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning if we, we're at Colwyn Bay, for instance, and I'm back the next day doing it. But I was happy because I knew that I needed to build for that next phase in my life, even though it was tough.
I know you mentioned that there were some murmurings of sort of like college courses and stuff when you started in YTS, but it was very, very rare. Whereas you look at the structure now, and pretty much every youth team, they do minimum a BTEC qualification. So at least these players who are coming through and don't manage to make it, because if we're completely honest, the percentage of players that will come through a particular group is only maybe, I wouldn't even probably say higher than 1% in terms of those who go on and make it pro as a full-time career. And then you times that by the 92 clubs or whatever, and even those lower down in non-league who have all got these setups. Would you rather if you could have your time again and pick the two eras where you went in as a youth team player, you follow exactly the same career path, would you go in now where there's a guaranteed qualification and it's set up in this model where it's a mixture between education, coaching badges and all of that at a young age, or would you go back in where you did start and where you did grow in and sort of, graft like you did alongside the lads that you were with at the time?
To be honest, I'd probably go the way I went in terms of, having that real football education, because that what the main emphasis was on the football. Whereas now, I know there's quite a lot of funding out there to kind of dangle that carrot to come onto this course. You can play football every day, but you're still studying. Whereas back then, you knew that you were in that youth team because you were worthy of that position, if you like, because your footballing ability got you there, and you were around proper footballing people. We used to do jobs back then, and sweep the changing room, sweep the stadium. It was like a proper 9-to-5 kind of upbringing. Whereas now, I think they are quite protected from that, if you like. And that was a real eye-opener for myself, but it made you into, for want of a better term, a man. It helped you grow up. It helped you to transition to the big bad world, because it's not easy out there, for anyone really. But as a professional footballer, as a young 17-year-old, you need to make that transition pretty quick, and that really did help me.
I find that quite interesting because, like you say, it has changed a lot, and you wouldn't get away with half of the stuff that you did then, which now you wouldn't get away with it at all. I mean, even some things as silly as like initiations to make you feel part of the team, cleaning the changing rooms, washing somebody's boots, that sort of thing. It's just not happened because it changes, and does make you wonder actually about, you look at some of the coaches who were so successful in that era, and if they were to try and get in there now, their approach just wouldn't work because it's a different game. And I think you're seeing that in up and down the game now. Some of those older managers who had that thing of youth team players need to help out, sweep the dressing room, etc. It just doesn't work now in the modern game, does it? And I think that's a bit of a shame, actually.
It is, yeah, because players are protected now, so there's less kind of resilience in the game. And to be able to succeed in the game, you need resilience. I talked about the setbacks I had from Chesterfield. That builds you as a person in terms of having those setbacks. And it shows you as a character to kind of pick yourself up and go again. And at the minute, in this day and age, if they get a bit of a setback, a bit of a knock, that's it, they're gone. You don't see them again, which is a shame, because there's quite a few talented footballers, no doubt, who've kind of had that knockback and just thought, oh, I'm not going to bother anymore, So, it is. The game's moved on an awful lot. You think about it, it's 20 years ago since we started out, and the game has moved on massively. Some parts for the better, some not so much. But I definitely think that kind of youth team initiation, upbringing, valuing what it's like to actually earn your money for a living, is lost nowadays.
I'm not for a second saying that it's a thing which is a negative, but I think it's interesting to think about that and sort of say maybe it's gone the other two way, and the other way a little bit. It is a little bit overprotective, because, like you say, it is all about character building and strength building. I think that's what brings me nicely back to talking about this fantastic 20-year anniversary of this promotion, because this was a group of players who had all learnt together and grown together. They weren't picked up from transfer markets and built together over one season and brought together a squad and gelled over a season. They were gelled and built and grown and developed over a long period of time.
Oh yeah. We right from kind of 98 through to the promotion season in 01-02. It took 4 or 5 years, and even before that, Bobby Hassell's probably a year older than me. Diz is a year older. Players like Danny Bacon as well. We all came through together. We had that same upbringing, that consistency from Skip, from Ivan, from Baz, then transitioned through to kind of Billy and the first team. And we just went through together as good friends, good mates, but also knowing each other's game as well, which really does help in terms of forming a consistent side.
So realistically, this promotion which we won back in 01-02, the foundations of which were probably laid in the late 90s.
Absolutely, yeah. And you think about the journey we went on in the FA Youth Cup with that bunch of players, getting to the quarterfinals as a League Two team, was it back then, or third division team. It was unheard of for a third division team to get through to the quarterfinals of the FA Youth Cup. So it was definitely, the signs were there in the late 90s, and obviously Skip and Billy kind of took that on in terms of where we got to with the promotion.
Let's talk about some of that the transition, and we've sort of mentioned that it doesn't happen nowadays in terms of like initiations and the jobs which you had to do. What was your initiation? How did you get taken into to the first team?
Well, luckily I kind of slipped in through the back door, if you like, because obviously I was still doing my A-levels and I was only playing on a part-time basis. I only used to turn up for games. I never used to train because obviously the other boys were kind of full-time training, and I never did that because I was at school. I was at sixth form, so I just used to turn up on a Saturday, play the youth team games on a Saturday, and then the evening FA Youth Cup games. So it was almost like I was just kind of slipped in through the back door without having to do initiation. But I know when I became a professional and the other youth team lads came in, basically used to chuck couple of pairs of boxing gloves on the changing room floor, and we used to have to box. We used to have to literally fight each other until knockout, more or less. So it was pretty brutal back then. And I've seen some brutal fights, but that was part of the growing up, and that's part of the transition from coming out of school and into a youth team. So I got away with initiation, but I saw many initiation from some of the other lads coming through.
If you had to get involved in that, say you walked into the changing rooms and the gloves were on the floor and they were saying, right, come on, it's time. First and foremost, who would you have hated to have seen over the opposite side of the room putting the gloves on?
Bobby Hassell, without a doubt. Bobby I think he did a bit of boxing in his time, and he was a real kind of a tough character, a real experience, obviously boxer, but very aggressive. So I would not like to come up against Bobby.
And if we're going to go the flip side, who would you have fancied your chances against?
I don't know. It probably would have been Jamie Clark, let's say. Me and Clark could go back a long way, and me and him are pretty similar in terms of being quite laid back. So I can see us just standing there with his gloves on, not really landing a blow, and just like, letting the world go by, if you like.
What's the worst initiation that you've seen that you've sort of stood back and thought, I wouldn't have liked to have got involved with that? Aside from the boxing, what's one of the worst ones that you've seen?
I haven't really, like I say, that day of, I know nowadays, obviously they get them up on the table in the pre-match meal with the kind of microphone and cracking on, and saw a few dodgy karaoke performances in Villamora when we went there after losing to Leicester in the FA Cup. So there's some howling karaoke performances that I've seen in my time, and quite inebriated ones as well.
Throw me a few names under the bus. Who would you, if once the glass was, they used to get the little glass, didn't they? Tap on the glass with a fork, and then present someone with like a spoon or something. Who would you turn around to your teammates and go, Christ, cover your ears?
Alan Tankard weren't the greatest singer, and he used to howl away. But I tell you, it was a good one. Martin Pemberton, Pembo. He was a class singer. Real silky voice in the clubs of Villamora.
Let's delve into that season then, 'cause it sounds like it was a great dressing room and a real good atmosphere to be around. And obviously, as the season progressed, there was ups, there was downs, but in the end, it did achieve that success. At what point in that season did you know in your heart of hearts that actually something special could happen here?
Well, I think, to be honest, it was even before that. We knew that we had this cohort of players. I think Skip recognised that we had a cohort of players who he could really kind of build a promotion-winning team. You've got Liam Lawrence, Lee Williamson, you've got Craig Disley, you've got Ali Asher back then, obviously Bobby Hassel. A real good core of players who you could build a team around. So for me, it was even before the start of that season. It was just a case of how we would all transition into first team football, because it is a big step from youth team into first team. But I think that's how Skip and Billy did a really good job in terms of 2001, testing the water every now and again. Some going at faster pace than others. So Liam went into the team pretty much straight away and took to it like a duck to water, whereas myself, in that 2001 team, I think I made one substitute appearance against Southend, so my time came a bit later. But then I think I started that promotion season away at Hartlepool, and I played the first 10 games. I started the first 10 games, so that was my kind of transition into first team football, which I kind of really enjoyed, and then fell off the radar a little bit in terms of the first team. But again, I was only a young lad still. Bitten and bobbing with kind of substitute appearances, and then again got back in the team for the running. So it was something that we all knew was there in terms of that potential. It was just about fulfilling that potential, and it just all came together nicely in that last season.
Now, as I'll mention a number of times over this little series, this was really the first time that I started watching football, so I can't really remember too much about it. So I'm going to be relying on you for a lot of the memories and a lot of the stats and the games, which I'm sure you'll be perfect with doing that. But how old were you when this season was kicking off? Because I was only sort of 11 years old when this season was happening. I only really getting into football for the first time. But how old were you when you were out there playing when this season begun?
So I was 19 when it first started, and as a 19-year-old, you think you're invincible. You don't really think about confidence really doesn't come into it that much because you're a young lad, just go out there and you play your football. So very little pressure in terms of, still living at home with mum and dad, paying £10 a week board or whatever it was. So there's no real pressure in terms of paying a mortgage or anything. So you just, just go out there and do what you needed to do with your mates every day.
And when you strip that back, you said yourself, you were a teenager, you were 19 years of age, and you look at the other players in there as well. They must have been similar ages.
Yeah. So Liam was 90, but we're all 81, 82. We were born. Me, Lee, Liam. Obviously, Bobby's a year older. Diz is a year older. So they were probably 20. So you probably got half a dozen players at 19, 20 in that team, which is unbelievable, really, if you think about it.
Yeah, it's a huge achievement when you strip it back to go on and for such a young squad to go all the way as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it just shows you the quality of player that we had in terms of what they've gone on to achieve since playing for Mansfield as well. In terms, Liam, international footballer, Bobby, consistent championship player, Diz, championship. Lee Williamson, Premier League, Liam, Premier League. It's all there.
Yeah, it is. It must be such a proud thing as well when you look at that, because you've watched these lads grow, and now you're watching them go off and do all these fantastic things. It must fill you with so much pride to have seen these, because one thing I know for certain is that once you finished your Stags career and that squad sort of began to dissolve and things like that, whilst you might have gone your separate ways in terms of career-wise, you guys all remained in contact and remained friends. It wasn't just, we were this team. You were friends. You were like a massive family.
Yeah, we grew up together. Our formative years were spent playing football together, and obviously when we did go on to play at kind of higher levels, I can remember playing against Liam when he was at Sunderland and I was at Crewe in the Championship. I remember playing against Chrissy Greenacre when he was at Stoke and I was at Crewe. So even at that Championship level, our paths, still cross, if you like, when we were playing at that higher level 2 or 3 years after the promotion.
Now let's give some credit to those who were behind the scenes as well. So like we said, the seeds for this promotion started to be sown sort of late 90s. It would have been Stuart Watkiss then who was in charge of the youth team, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Skip.
Yeah, who else was involved with that youth team setup then?
So obviously Ivan did a lot of the supportive in terms of training sessions. Baz Statham, and then Neil Richardson kind of came along when Skip got the first team job, took over the youth team. So that was really the cohort. And there's another physio, Craig, as well, who helped out. That was a kind of backroom team back then, believe it or not. And Billy did, and big hats off to Billy really from my perspective in terms of giving me that chance in professional football, giving me an opportunity to play first team football. He took a big gamble on me really on that promotion season to put me as a 19-year-old, having only played probably half a game for against Southend, straight into the starting lineup at Hartlepool away on the opening day of the season of that 01-02 season.
Yeah, it's quite incredible to think about that. How was Billy with you, and what was the gap like? Because you talk to some young players now and they say, we get nowhere near the first team. We don't train on the same pitch. We don't even train at the same venue sometimes. We barely see the first team players, because there's not that interaction. There's a gulfing level. You think about players who are similar ages actually now. I'm thinking of actually a couple within the current Stags setup. They're not thrown into League Two action. They're sent out for 2 or 3 seasons to develop at Conference National, Conference North, and maybe even below that in some cases as well. So what was it like then in terms of the structure of the club, the relationship between Skip and the youth team and Skip's youth team and the first team at the time, sort of late 90s, early noughties?
It was pretty clear cut really in terms of back then you do your 2-year YTS from kind of 16 to 18. That's your about formative years. And then as soon as you reach that 18, you either become a professional footballer or you don't. And when we went on to become, sign professional contracts, that was the time we were with the first team, and there were no kind of, under 21s, under 23s, whatever. So yeah, it's just a case of straight into the first team, training with the first team. That helps you develop. You're playing with better players. You're playing with that intensity every single day helps you develop. So that certainly helped the development of myself, but also obviously the young players who are coming through together.
I think it's quite interesting that you mentioned that, like, that transition was there, and it was an easier transition than what it is nowadays. What was the staff like as individuals? Because what I find interesting is the dynamic between backroom staff. Sometimes you've got good cop, bad cop, and you've got the sort of the kind uncle figure that'll look after you, the big brother, that sort of thing. If you could break down the Mansfield staff at that time, right from the top of Bill Dearden right to the coaches and the staff behind the scenes, who played what role, and how key was that to the success which you guys had in terms of transitioning from that youth team period into that first team environment?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when we got into the first team, Skip was assistant manager, and it helped because he was our youth team manager right through, 98 through to 2000. So there was that consistency there for us because we knew his kind of training methods, we knew how he wanted, his teams to perform. We were used to the kind of sessions that he used to put on because they were really intense as well. Because Skip wanted us to kind of train how he played, so there was no let up in terms of possession drills. He wanted you to train exactly how you played, and we knew that. We knew, you had players coming in from elsewhere, some experienced pros who weren't used to training to such a high intensity. Many a time we used to go on that Astro, and I'm not joking, we used to ping ball. It was absolutely zipping on that AstroTurf, the old school 1G or whatever it is. It was absolutely
sand-based terrible, wasn't it, that Astro? I mean, I remember it got ripped up years ago now, and there's more of a 3G one down there, but I remember playing on it as a kid, and because it was outside the stadium, it was absolutely horrendous. So I can't imagine what it would have been like to train on.
Yeah, but the lads didn't care. That's what they were used to. That's what Skip brought them up on, and that's how they got the intensity. I firmly believe that AstroTurf was one of the main reasons that the players developed so quickly, and because your first touch had to be like that because it used to zip off. So you needed to kill that ball absolutely dead. So in terms of helping you develop, it can be attributed to quite a bit of Mansfield's success, really, from that perspective. Even though it wasn't nice, we used to come off and we used to have big grazers all down his legs, friction burns, but we didn't care. We absolutely loved playing it and training at that intensity. So yeah, Skip was obviously, he kind of tactically, technically, we're kind of leading the ship, whereas Billy was that kind of man manager. He was the one who wanted to get to know the players on a personal level, and talk to them, as a human being, which he did often. He used to pull the young lads to one side every now and again during training sessions and say, look, I think it might be useful for you to go out on loan or to have a bit of time away and really kind of look after you as a young person going into professional football. So that was his role. And again, Baz was kind of trying to drive you forward in terms of prevention in terms of your injuries, but also developing you physically. I must say as well, Mark Kearney, in terms of his sessions in an afternoon for the young lads as well, from a technical perspective, little volleys, working on your first touch. He used to do a lot of work with us and just the young lads as young pros after, to work on our kind of technical ability, and that's really how we kind of developed so quickly because of the time and the dedication from all of the coaching staff.
We've got a common link there. When I was in, I think it was year 9 or maybe year 10, I was actually in the same tutor group as Mark's lad, Lewis.
Okay.
Good lad. And for a year or so, Joe Witt School in Reneth, it got a grant to become like a sports college. It had this nice 3G built on it, a brand new sort of sports hall brought in. And I think Mark was brought in as like football director or something, and he used to take all the PE. And PE lessons never used to sort of excite me. I used to hate PE. I mean, I used to hate football as well. And I always remember going out on a PE, this one particular PE session when I was starting to go to Stags games more. I was really, really enjoying it. Like the likes of Pilks and Macca were my heroes and things like that, and I wanted to be them. And I remember walking out to this PE session and seeing this session set up and thought, wow, this looks really good. I really want to be involved in that. And even though I was honestly, hand on heart, the worst footballer within that particular group, didn't matter to him because he took the time and sort of said, you know, try it this way, try it that way. And just because you wasn't the best didn't mean that he ignored you, and it didn't mean that he cast you aside. He still had the same amount of time for you. And I think that's really a key thing. So I can imagine actually being a player in that youth team setup, or a young player that's breaking into the first team, to go out to a session like that, to, you know, be mentored by an ex-player at the club and someone who was a bit of a legend at the club as well. That must have been a real lift for you, because it had a real impact on me in one lesson. And we're talking about one lesson at school, and I remember it forever. But to have that on an almost daily basis, wow.
Yeah, no, and you could tell he was really passionate about developing young players, and he could see, the way in which each individual could develop as well. I remember one time I was playing a reserve game for Halifax, and you know, I wasn't the most confident of young lads, so I kind of won this penalty, and I was, you know, I grabbed the ball and I kind of chucked it to one of the other lads to, you know, you take the penalty kind of thing, and he picked the ball up, came over, and he kind of rammed it in my stomach. He says, "Andy, you're a centre forward, you take it," and I took it, scored. So it was that, having that kind of, somebody to give you a bit more confidence, really, as well. So I always forget about Mark Kearney in terms of the role he played, but he was a real massive influence on us all, kind of how we developed technically.
Yeah, it always. One other memory I've got of that same session as well. At the end, we had the balls on the edge of the penalty area, and he said, "Right, if you hit the crossbar, you go in, you get changed, you finish your session early or whatever." And sort of, you know, like the last one, it wasn't really a punishment, but the last one to hit it had to sort of like do a like press ups or something like, or detention or some sort of, I don't know, not nothing in a negative light, but sort of that thing of, there was the carrot of wanting to do well, and I couldn't lift a football for the life of me off the ground. I was literally woeful. But I remember putting the ball on the ground, and he sort of looked over me as if to say, "You can do it. You can do it." And all the other people in the class bullied me on a regular basis, and there was something in me which I wanted to show them that I could do it, but also for him I wanted to do it, to show that I'd been listening, to show that I'd taken on board the technique. I'll never forget it. Pinged it first time.
Happy days.
Never done it before or since. Pinged it first time, and I was absolutely buzzing, and that'll stay with me forever. But I think you've got a huge point. As much as we talk about, you know, the likes of Skip and Billy and Baz, those other players, those ex-pros that were there, they deserve as much of a mention as well, because they helped that schooling. And even whether it's a coach that has an impact on you for one session, or a coach that has an impact on you for life, it makes a difference. And it's those, Adam Murray used to say, you know, when he was a manager, it's those little 1% which make the difference, and he's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I can remember the little games that Mark Kearney used to set up. You talk about those little games where you're under a bit of pressure, but that brings it out of you. You know, you set these little games up where you split into kind of 2 groups of 10, and you'd have to kind of run out, dribble through the cones, kick it up, head it, come back, give it to your next mate, like a relay. And you knew if you let your team down, and you'd be second, and you'd have to do a forfeit. So you wanted to make sure that you didn't, you know, mess up. So that sort of pressure helped you to develop as a player and to handle, you know, the pressure of 6,000 people.
Yeah, I absolutely love little things like that. I think it really goes unnoticed, and sometimes the influence of a coach and those in the back room can go unnoticed because the goal scorer will take the credit. The goalkeeper, if he's made a good save, sometimes will take the credit. The manager will take the credit for a substitution made at the right time. But you sort of strip it back and actually you think about it's not just about one moment. It's about the work and stuff which goes into it, which I think is a really key thing. Let's move on a little bit and talk about some of the players we had in there. You mentioned the relationship between Bill Dearden and Skip, and obviously Bill was the manager at the start of that campaign, but left in January to go to Notts County. Usually, when a manager of his stature leaves, it can rock the boat slightly, but the one thing which I've gained from speaking to you on air, off air, and to other players and coaches at the time was because of the work that had gone in and the progression under Skip, the only fear was that he wouldn't get the job.
Yeah, but I can't even remember there being a kind of a limbo land, if you like, from Billy leaving to Skip taking over. I think it was actually Billy who told everybody that was leaving at that game. I think he might have told us after the Leicester game at Filbert Street, third round of the FA Cup. We'd done well. I think we lost 2-1. I think we took about 3,500 Mansfield fans, and it was after the game. Sat down, like lads. I've had an opportunity to go to Notts County, which I'm going to take, but Skip's going to take over as manager, and that was as simple as it was. We're going to send you off to East Midlands Airport tomorrow morning. Pack your stuff, tell your missus that you're going away for a few days. You're going to Portugal, get away from all of the hoo-ha that's going to come our way. And again, that was Billy to a T. Get yourself out of this environment, get away to a nice sunny environment, play a couple of games, play a couple of rounds of golf, and just ignore everything else. And it just, such an easy transition from Billy leaving, which was a big miss. But, Skip taking over, had that consistency. It was his way of playing. He'd started the ball rolling right in the very early days of that season in terms of how he wanted the team to set up. So no real change from that perspective. It was just Billy had moved on to Meadow Lane.
Yeah, there's two things that I pick up from that. The first, we won't dwell on too much. And I think that's what you said about Skip. It was Skip's way of playing. It was him which implemented it. Billy was just the extra man there, the man manager, the one that would put the arm round and make the little tactical tweaks here and there. But it was very much Skip's. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It was his DNA, if you like, which would been sort of blood from the 90s with that U team all the way through, which made that transition natural. But the other thing was something which it's the first time I've heard it. I know you've spoken about going abroad after that Leicester game a few times, but it's the first time I've heard you sort of say, Billy came across and sort of said, you're going away. Who orchestrated that break? Whose decision was it to say, you need to get away from the storm, what's coming, off you go, come back and keep your focus? Who orchestrated that?
It must have been Keith Haslam, to be fair, because I know he was quite fond of his little joints over to Portugal. I think he had a place over there. So there must have been some kind of thinking behind, right, yeah, let's take him away. Because, the games are already organised. We were playing 2 Portugal teams. You can't organise a game within a week, can you? So they must have taken some, strategic foresight to know, right, that week we're going to have to be in Portugal. We have to organise these games. We have to organise hotels. We have to organise flights. We have to organise transfers. So, yeah, it must have took some planning, even though all we knew about it was after that final whistle went at Filbert Street. So
I'm just having a look at the calendar and trying to think about fitting this in. So the Leicester game was the 5th of January. Obviously 2-1 defeat, Chrissy Greenacre on the score sheet. Expected, but a great performance and one which lives long in the memory of the Stags fans. Then the next game after that, according to my records, would have been on the 12th of Jan, an away trip to Southend. So to fit 2 games in effectively maybe just over a week and an away trip and all of that's like you say, some organising, but also mental to think about it, because if fans got wind of that now, there'd be absolute uproar.
I know. Normally you only get a week away when there's an international break, and you don't get many of them in League One and League Two. So yeah, to sneak a cheeky few days away to Portugal within the space of a week is some going, and it wasn't let's call it a working break, if you like. It was very much a break. Yeah, we did have a couple of games in there, but I'll be honest, I wasn't fit enough to kick a football on some occasions when we were trying to play football. Never mind compete against the Portuguese third division side.
Do you know if the fans knew at all?
I don't know. It must have been. No, I don't think they even did. Because obviously, I know now you get a bit of a following, don't you, when you're going abroad? But there was none of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think social media plays a massive part in that now, and obviously back then,
so
it didn't exist, did it? It was the old Nokia 3310 and playing Snake 2 on the plane. I
think we had Stag's Net back then. That was about it.
Oh Christ, we won't go there. We won't go there. But I can't. No, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to think now. Obviously, there's comparisons between the current squad we've got and that squad, and had Nigel Clough taken his side away after the Middlesbrough game, the FA Cup game, and for a cheeky couple of weeks in Portugal, it'd have been all over Instagram, it'd have been all over Twitter, social media. There'd been no hiding it. There'd been absolute uproar. But I guess that they were the times. It's absolutely different times. But from a mentality perspective, you mentioned there about Billy sort of saying, we've got this trip organised, off you go, good luck, get your heads down. Did that help to make that? Because I think had you stayed in the UK, you were obviously taken away for a purpose, and that was to avoid the uproar. Because Billy going to Notts County, it's not like going to a Crewe or a Stoke where there's no real history, there's no real rivalry. It literally is going to a rival, and it didn't go down well.
No, and. Yeah, that was part of the thinking, really, to kind of give everyone, some time away from that. There might have been a bit of a kickback from kind of Billy's perspective, obviously going to local rivals, but also, leaving an opportunity to get a team promoted as well. So we must have, and I think I've said it before to you, Craig. I genuinely feel that was Billy through and through in terms of stepping aside and going, there you go, Skip. You've started this from the kind of youth team that came through. I'm now going to step to one side. Yes, going to Notts County, but there you go. It's kind of carte blanche to go, right. Take the lads home if you like. To finish the job that you started, and that's a very kind of noble thing for Billy to do, and that was Billy through and through.
Was it easy the fact that Notts County weren't in the same division? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even remember any rivalry back in the early noughties. I know it did develop when we started playing against them a bit more, and they always managed to sneak a goal against Notts County, which didn't go down too well when I signed for them back in 05, 06. But yeah, I wasn't their most favourite player. Let's put it like that. But yeah, I don't think it was really on our radar. Really, I know we had a few good battles in youth team. I can remember playing against the likes, Paul Heffernan and a few of the others from a youth team perspective. But first team, there was never really that on-field rivalry, if you like, with Notts County, from my perspective anyway.
You come back from your little joint abroad, and your first game under Stuart Watkiss as first team manager, as the man in charge, if you like, was a trip to Southend away. A 1-0 defeat. Jet lag, we're going to put that down to.
Was that away down at Southend?
Yeah. Yeah, 12th of Jan 2002 is the first game I've got on my records after the Leicester game. So that would have been Skip's first game in charge. Yeah. So, yeah, a 1-0 defeat away at Southend. So we're going to put that down to jet lag.
I think so, yeah. Or the fact that we were down Southend on the Friday night having fish and chips or whatever. trying to get all this alcohol out of the system. But no, that's a bit of a probably back. But I think Southend were doing quite well back then as well.
Yeah.
We had quite a few decent players, so it wasn't an easy challenge. And the travelling as well. There was no overnight stops back then, Craig, in terms of, a 4 or 5 hour schlep down to Southend on a coach, then straight off the coach. Probably did have a pre-match back then, but we still had to play kind of 90 minutes after a long journey. So, yeah, the overnight stops. We'd used all the budget in Portugal, so there were no chance of an overnight stop.
Oh, I can just imagine that first day as skipper's manager knocking on Mr. Haslam's door and saying, "We've got Southend away coming up. Any chance of a cheeky?" No, you just
No.
not a chance. I find that quite intriguing. So there was no overnight stops at all, was it? Or was it very rare? Would you maybe get, I don't know, one a season? Because I think now of the trips that Mansfield make, and I would probably say that 85, maybe even 95% of the away games they play, they'll have an overnighter either before or after.
No, there was none. Well, I think Plymouth we stopped overnight, but that literally I can remember travelling up to Hartlepool. I know it's not that much of a trek. That's a 2.5 hour journey. That was on a double decker bus, believe it or not. I think it was kind of rented it from like Redfern's. You know them school ones, them green school double deck. I think we went up to Hartlepool on one of them.
Christ.
And yeah, that Plymouth was the only overnight stop. That's a fact.
Wow, that's so strange to think about now. Like that's another thing about modern day football, which is so different to how it was then. It's so strange. Now, I guess that's pretty much, why home form was key, because when you're having these long journeys, it does absolutely take it out of you. And squads back then were way smaller than what they are now as well. So, there's not this whole thing of, right, I'm going to rest 4 or 5 of you for the next home game. You're not going to do this journey because it's going to make you uncomfortable with an injury which you're carrying. You literally just got to get on with it.
Yeah. And I don't think fans really kind of get that side of things in terms of, how important it is to have an overnight stop, how important it is to have a pre-match meal. I don't think we had that many pre-match meals back then either, So yeah, that preparation now has obviously come into the game a lot more. And like you say, Stags now, even for a 2-hour journey, is probably an overnight stop, whereas us, a 2-hour journey was quite a short trek for us. So yeah.
And then, of course, after the Southend game, where you've sobered up after your fish and chips, you've been beaten 1-0, you're back on UK soil, back on the right time zone. Fortunately then, a few days later, you're back at home to Hartlepool United, a 3-0 win in front of just shy of 4,500. What memories do you have from that game? Because that would have been the first home game under Stuart Watkiss as well. Was the support still there for him, and did it still feel like there was a sense of something could happen with the fans, despite losing a manager who was very well respected by a lot of Stags fans for many a year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was just, Skip getting to know, obviously, being a manager, being at Field Mill as a first team manager, trying to put a performance in against a lowly team like Hartlepool, and getting that first win, which was vital. Really, I don't think I played that game. I must have been spare man or something, but the game's not too. Although I do think that Tony Lormer, who was with the Stags earlier on in that season, went to Hartlepool, and I believe he played. And I don't know whether he scored a penalty in that game.
No, we kept 3-0, so kept a clean sheet in that one. So
so Tony Lormer coming back to the Stags.
It's a good one. And one thing which interests me as well, I'm looking through some of the names and stuff within that squad, and like I said, I can't remember too many of them because it was the first real time. In fact, it was probably around sort of January, February time where I first started going. So got bullied at school quite a lot. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was, to be fair. I got bullied at school a lot. I had obviously really bushy ginger hair, I had big Deirdre Barlow glasses, and I had a temper shorter than anything you can imagine. So,
really?
I was a massive target for bullies. Didn't really have a great home life either, to be fair. So, school was a place where I used to take out a lot of anger, and I was an easy target. And I just remember never really liking football as a kid. But for whatever reason, I was taken along to a Stags game, and can't for the life remember who it was against, but I just remember really, really enjoying the atmosphere and speaking to people and feeling confident about it. And it was then where it started to build and build. And one of my first memories, when you first identify someone as a hero that you want to be and you want to emulate, and I'll talk about this when he's on the episode himself, was actually Pilks. I remember watching him pull off a ridiculous save and the crowd going absolutely like celebrating and applauding and thinking, I want to be that guy. I want to be the one who dives around. And from that point onwards, I used to like have a little small group of mates. I always used to be the one that went in goal and stuff and remember that. But some of the names that I'm looking through, these are experienced names who helped us get over the line. People sort of say, Scott Sellers, huge pull for us in that season. Only started 5 games, scored 1 goal, but his influence was absolutely incredible. And it's the same for 2 or 3 of them. And a lot of that came through Skip in January, didn't it?
Yeah, just to acknowledge that, the young lads didn't have experience to kind of, manage the pressure of being in the hierarchy, in the top 6. I needed someone in there just to add that bit of experience, bit of kind of stability. So we brought in Scott Sellers, and I think he brought in David Kelly as well. Again, another kind of international footballer who's been about a bit, and 2 heroes of mine really from kind of watching Premier League years and watching Premier League games all through the 90s. They were really kind of big heroes for me. So to see them walk through the door was a big a big thing for myself as a young player.
How pivotal was it bringing those players in to get you over the line? Because from a mentality point of view, as the season goes on, you sort of get yourself solidified in terms of a league position. Like you say, that pressure will start to slowly simmer away. So you need somebody to come in and give you that bit of nous.
Yeah, and obviously David Kelly's a centre forward as well. So from that perspective, he used to talk to me, or he used to talk me through every single game I used to play up front. I can remember we played, I think it was Lincoln on a Tuesday night when we won 4-1, and that was one of the big kind of not turning points, but a bit of a we can actually do it here. We went to Lincoln, big local rivals, and tonked them 4-1, and it was such a good performance. We had loads of good night performances under the floodlights, but that one away from home at Lincoln, 1-4-1. I don't think I scored, but I can remember a lot of fans saying it was one of the best performances in a Stag shirt that night, and we all seemed to click, and that was a big part of David Kelly or Ned and Scotty Sellers in terms of starting the ball rolling, really, in terms of a running.
And I'm sure we'll talk more about those players when we get other players on over the course of the series as well. Let's move to the final 4 games of the season. Towards the back end of the season, we went through a little bit of a rough patch. 5 games without a winning, which included 4 defeats in there. So it was going a little bit sort of to the wire, and it did go to the wire. But you got yourself back in the side, and 3 goals in the last 4 games, which helped us get us over the line. You must look back at that with really fond memories, none more so than the penultimate home game against Cheltenham, the promotion rivals.
Yeah. Probably the best game that I've been involved in, to be honest, in terms of the atmosphere, the occasion, but also the kind of win or bust, really, in terms of that result. Because if Cheltenham had got a point, I think they would have either gone up or been above us to go up, and been in the kind of driving seat for promotion. So for me, must have been 12,000-13,000 fans packed into that stadium that night. A massive atmosphere. The whole town turned up. I think ITV were there as well, not to broadcast it live, but to do an extra highlights package. I think the ball came in for that first header. I've kind of beat one of the defender at the back stick, come off a post, and Chris is sniffing, obviously, like he does. Knocked it in. They've equalised. When it's going into the final 20 minutes or so, Bobby's shanked a shot. I've stuck a leg out, and it's gone in. And what a feeling! Now,
we could delve into the last few games, but we're not going to do. We're going to save that for when we've got some of the other the teammates on and things like that. But Who are you looking forward to reconnecting with over this? Because there must be so many memories when you start talking and when you start thinking about those games, especially when you have, those teammates who are around you to bounce off and remember those things with. I can sit here and ask you all the questions under the sun, but it's only really, truly when you start talking to them that those memories are going to start flooding back. So who are you looking forward to reconnecting with?
Yeah, I mean, Bobby, obviously, we were in a car school together for 2 or 3 years, spent a lot of time with each other, and he's a real top bloke. So I'm looking forward to reconnecting with Bobby. Pilts as well, he's from my village. So growing up in my village, Pilts was a bit of a hero for me because obviously he went on to play for Manchester United. He actually used to do all of my kind of Sunday League presentations. So he's handed me a trophy or two through my time. So Pilts is definitely one I'm looking at reconnecting with, and we were together at Notts County as well. So yeah, I mean Robbo as well. What a top bloke, Les Robinson. The funniest man you'll ever meet. He's got some cracking stories, and he was a proper character in that dressing room. And also Cords as well, part of a car school, a nice bloke. I know we saw each other. I can't remember what it was now. Like a charity game for Reece Day, I think it was a few years back.
Yes, I remember that well. Yeah.
That must have been 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was. It was the end of the 2011-12 season. Yeah, Mansfield had just lost out. Or no, was it? Or was it the promotion season? I'm struggling to remember. It will either be 2011-2012 or 2012-13. I've got a feeling it was 12-13.
Yeah, I think it might have been 2013, the summer of 2013.
Yeah, it was because I remember... Yeah, I remember players like Lee Stevenson, who was with the Stags at the time playing for us, and he was the promotion-winning side, and Alan Marriott, the keeper at the time, he played outfield for the second half, and I remember Pilks, and there was I think Reece had a penalty, he missed the first one, and the ref made him retake it. I remember that game very, very well, actually. I enjoyed that, and another top bloke, Reece Day, as well. There's so many characters from down the years that we can reconnect with. So even after this 01-02 series is done, we need to dig up some more. We need to get into that black book of contacts and get in touch, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. Have to reconnect.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's one name as well which Stags fans will be screaming at me to ask you to reconnect with, and that's a certain man who's overseas in, I think, New Zealand the last time we heard of him, a certain Mr. Greenacre. Don't worry, Stags fans. Messages are being exchanged and we're working on something. So... don't worry, it will all come good. Now, that's all we've got time for in terms of talking about things on the pitch in that particular year. You're going to be the co-host for the rest of the series. We've got some great guests lined up, some great conversation as well, so there'll be much more we can delve into. But from the last time you were on our Stag Stories series that we love a bit of competition and we love a quiz here. So, as you're going to be co-host for the rest of the series, you've got to set the standard. So we're going to do a brand new quiz on the show, and it's going to be called the Mansfield Town, A Question of Sport. So it's our brand new quiz, which will see our guests face 9 questions themed around sport, the letters of which will spell out the word Mansfield. So the first will begin with an M, and then the second's an A, and then so on and so on. So you get the word Mansfield. Simplistic, I think.
As long as you give me the acronym before and I work that out for myself, then I should be all right, I think.
Don't worry, it all starts with the questions are like which M, which A. So as
long as you work that out.
Yeah, because I know some particular footballers, we won't mention any names, but there'll be some that struggle to spell Mansfield, right?
Yeah, I think I'll be one of them, to be honest with you.
It's going to be up against the clock. The person who gets the most right in the quickest time will be crowned the winner. As like last time, a wrong answer is plus 5 seconds, but a pass is plus 10. So it's worth a go, even if you don't know. I am determined to make that a catchphrase. That is going to happen over this series. And then at the end of it, there will be a chance for you to double your points by solving a Stags anagram, but the choice is entirely up to you. First and foremost, are you up for giving it a go? You don't really have much choice, but I thought I'd be courteous and ask you anyway, to be honest. But
yeah, let's go.
Okay, so... Right then, as I say, it spells out the word Mansfield. I'll start the clock before I ask the first question and so on and so on. So, in 3, 2, 1, let's play. Which M won the US Open in 2011, his first major championship victory? It can be a surname as well. So which M won the US Open in 2011, his first major championship victory?
Adam Murray.
Which A is nicknamed the Hurricane, a 4-time World Snooker Championship finalist?
Which A?
Which A?
I haven't got a clue. I hate snooker.
Have a random... Always passed. Which N could be described as a former horsehead-wearing footballer, and in 2008 became the first pro footballer to appear on Countdown? He's one of your former teammates. He's one of my heroes.
Neil McKenzie.
Which S is signalled by an umpire holding aloft both arms and is also traditionally the number worn by a central defender in football?
6.
Which F is the part of the body where you'd find your metatarsal?
Foot.
Which I is the term used to describe a cricket team's time at the wicket whilst batting? Which I is the term used to describe a cricket team's time at the wicket whilst batting?
Innings.
Which E was the first African country to ever qualify for a World Cup?
Ethiopia.
Which L owns the has the longest winning streak in NBA history? Which L has the longest winning streak in NBA history?
LA Lakers.
And finally, which D won gold alongside Matty Lee at the 2020 Summer Olympics in the men's synchronised diving?
I know about it. It's not coming. Nah, pass.
I'll stop the clock there. Oh dear. How do you think you did?
Not well.
Let's have a little look. So, have a little count up of these, to be fair. I mean, I think you did better than last time when you were on it. Last time it was questions about you.
No, I got the best score on that one.
Oh no, you did. Yeah, you absolutely smashed it out of the park, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, people were complaining that the questions were too easy.
Oh, were they? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think this one, they were tricky. They were, and when you're under a bit of pressure.
5 right, in a total time, including penalties, of 2 minutes 35. So I'll go through the wrong answers. Which M won the US Open in 2011? His first major championship victory. It was Rory McIlroy.
Oh, golf.
Yeah.
Well, US Open could be tennis as well, couldn't it?
Oh, I suppose so. Yeah. I mean,
I'm blaming the question there.
I mean, yeah, we might have to have a steward's inquiry on that one. I might hold my hands up slightly to that. Which A is nicknamed the Hurricane, 4-time World Snooker Championship finalist, and you went, I hate snooker. It's Alex Hurricane Higgins.
I want to know that anyway.
Mackie, you got right. 6, you got right. Foot, you got right. Innings, you got right. Egypt was the first African country to ever qualify for a World Cup.
Is Ethiopia actually in Africa?
Not a clue. I hated geography because, I'll be honest, geography and maths are my 2 weakest subjects, and both of which used to be on Tuesday afternoons. So guess where I was most Tuesday afternoons?
Yeah, damn stags.
Exactly. So wagging it is not the term. And then the last one, which D, you got it at the end. It was Tom Daly. Yeah, always look on the bright side of life, as they say. Right, well, we'll be chatting to you over the next 8 weeks or so. We've got plenty of guests lined up as well. Usually we give the last word to our guests in terms of their memories and stuff. We're going to save yours for the end of the season, but we've got one vital question to finish on. Andy White, what's your favourite biscuit?
I'm a big cookie man. Like a nice chocolate-covered cookie.
Oh, a chocolate-covered one. So we're not talking Maryland. We're talking one of the special. Like,
not Maryland. No. It's going to be one of those,
Foxes.
No. They come in a pack of 5 from Morrison's. The special ones that either white chocolate, raspberry, or chocolate covered. It's a big cookie.
That's a big shout. Right, I'm going to write this down. So, big chocolate-covered cookie. We'll have to remember these because at the end of the series we'll have a little league table on who's got the best biscuit. Other than that, that's been absolutely excellent. We've got Barry Statham up with us next week. just for a little bit of a tease for our listeners, what can we expect from Baz?
Well, I think Baz, obviously ex-military, very, very professional in what he does, but also got a real kind of skill in how he supports individuals, footballers, recover from injury, both physically and mentally. So yeah, it'll be a good show.